Picture yourself standing outside on a moonless night in the African savanna, approximately 100,000 years ago. Not the sanitized, romantically lit version of this scenario that documentaries tend to produce with carefully positioned camera lights and a dramatic soundtrack. The actual version. Complete, total, almost physical darkness. The kind that exists when there are no artificial light sources anywhere within dozens of kilometers. When the stars are the only illumination and there is no moon, when the landscape you have been navigating confidently all day has become a black wall approximately 2 meters in front of your face. You have a spear. You have the hunting skills that years of practice and apprenticeship from your community's most experienced hunters have given you. You have every cognitive capacity that anatomically modern Homo sapiens possesses. You are, by daylight, one of the most dangerous hunters in this ecosystem. Right now, in this darkness, you are not a hunter. You are food. The animals hunting in this darkness with you were not handicapped by the absence of light. They evolved for it. Their eyes have tapetum lucidum, the reflective layer behind the retina that bounces light back through photoreceptors a second time, effectively doubling sensitivity in low light conditions. Their hearing is directional to a degree that makes your hearing seem like a rough approximation of what sensory acuity could be. Their noses are detecting chemical information from your direction that you have no way to counter, no way to conceal, and no way to detect reciprocally. A leopard in this darkness is operating at full capacity. You are operating at perhaps 15% of yours. The decision that ancient humans made across cultures, across geographies, across the vast temporal span of human prehistory to not hunt at night was not a cultural peculiarity or a failure of ambition. It was one of the most sensibly rational decisions any animal has ever made about when to be where in a shared ecosystem. And the story of why, the sensory biology, the predator ecology, the risk calculation, and the surprising ways that ancient humans actually did use the night without hunting in it, is considerably more interesting than the simple answer of "it was dark" implies. Start with the human visual system, because this is where the night hunting prohibition is grounded most fundamentally, and because understanding what human vision actually is and what it is not changes the entire picture of ancient human relationship to darkness. Human eyes are extraordinary instruments optimized for a narrow set of conditions. Photopic vision, the vision that operates in normal daylight, is served by three types of cone photoreceptors in the retina, sensitive to different wavelengths corresponding broadly to red, green, and blue light. This trichromatic system allows color discrimination of extraordinary fineness. Humans can distinguish millions of discrete colors. And spatial resolution that at photopic light levels is among the highest of any mammal. Human daylight vision is better than most mammals, reflecting the visual ecology of the primate lineage, whose arboreal ancestors depended on fine color discrimination for identifying ripe fruit and navigating complex three-dimensional forest environments. But this visual excellence is conditional. The cone photoreceptors that provide high-resolution color vision require substantial light levels to function. As light falls below approximately 1 lux, roughly the illumination provided by a full moon, cone function degrades and vision shifts increasingly to scotopic mode, operated by rod photoreceptors that are more sensitive than cones, but that operate as a single channel. No color discrimination, reduced spatial resolution, and with a central blind spot where the fovea, densely packed with cones, has relatively few rods. Human scotopic vision, night vision, is functional, but limited compared to the night vision of most nocturnal and crepuscular predators. The maximum sensitivity of dark-adapted human vision is reached after approximately 30 minutes in complete darkness, as the rhodopsin visual pigment in rods regenerates to full concentration. Even fully dark-adapted human rod vision provides only coarse spatial resolution, no color information, and, most critically, no tapetum lucidum. The tapetum lucidum present in cats, dogs, hyenas, lions, and most other nocturnal predators effectively amplifies available light by giving photoreceptors two chances to absorb photons. Photons that pass through the photoreceptors on the first pass are reflected back by the tapetum and pass through again. The characteristic eye shine of nocturnal animals in artificial light is the reflection of this tapetum. The practical consequence is that a fully dark adapted human in moonless starlight conditions can detect large, high contrast objects at close range and can navigate without obstacles. Barely. They cannot track prey animals. They cannot assess terrain for hazard. They cannot detect approaching predators until the predator is extremely close. They cannot aim and throw a projectile weapon with any reliability. They cannot pursue prey that is using its own vastly superior night vision to evade them. A human hunting at night in the African savanna under moonless conditions would not be a competent predator operating at reduced efficiency. They would be a competent prey animal operating in full vulnerability. The predator community sharing the African savanna with ancient humans is where this vulnerability becomes the central survival consideration, because the same darkness that disabled human hunting capability was activating the full hunting capability of every major African carnivore. African lions are primarily crepuscular and nocturnal hunters, with the highest hunt success rates documented during the hours of darkness. The combination of their superior low-light vision, their ability to move quietly on padded feet, their hunting cooperation within prides that includes coordinated encirclement using darkness and tall grass as cover, and the absolute removal of their primary vulnerability, being spotted and mobbed by alert human groups before they can close to attack range, makes the dark hours the optimal hunting period for lions. The hours between full dark and full dawn are, from a lion's perspective, the hours when the most irritating counter-predator capability of human groups is nullified. Leopards are solitary ambush hunters whose preference for darkness reflects a hunting strategy that depends entirely on getting extremely close to prey before initiating the final attack sprint. The leopard's hunting success rate drops dramatically in open daylight. Their approach requires concealment that daylight limits. In darkness, the same visual advantage that lions exploit works in the leopard's favor, and the leopard's behavioral adaptations to solo hunting, patience, extreme stalking care, use of terrain for cover, are maximized when the prey cannot see or hear them approaching. Spotted hyenas are primarily nocturnal hunters whose activity patterns are more thoroughly separated from daylight than lions, with clan hunting groups forming during the dark hours and dispersing in the early light. The hyena clan's cooperative hunting capability, sustained pursuit of large prey over distances that exhaust the prey while the clan rotates fresh runners, is deployed primarily at night, with the social coordination of the hunt accomplished through vocalizations rather than visual signals, reflecting a communication system adapted for darkness. African leopard, lion, and spotted hyena together represent the three largest terrestrial predators in the African savannas that human ancestors inhabited, and all three shifted their peak activity to the hours of darkness. For ancient humans, the night was not simply less convenient for hunting. It was the hours when the predator community was most active, most coordinated, and most dangerous. And when the human group's primary defense mechanism, its ability to detect approaching threats at distance and mount coordinated collective responses, was severely degraded. The threat asymmetry of night deserves quantification in terms that make the decision to avoid night hunting self-evidently rational rather than culturally arbitrary. During the day, a human group in open terrain can detect a lion at several hundred meters. Sufficient distance to respond, to group together, to make noise, to throw rocks, to present the coordinated multi-body threat display that deters most predator approach. The human group's detection range for approaching threats is adequate to provide meaningful response time. At night, in the absence of fire, a human group cannot detect a lion until it is within perhaps 20 to 30 meters, close enough that the lion's attack sprint covers the distance faster than coordinated group response can organize. The margin between detection and contact has collapsed from several hundred meters to tens of meters, transforming a manageable threat into a near unmanageable one. And this calculation applies to every potential threat simultaneously. The leopard in the tree that the group camps under, the hyena clan that has been tracking the group's scent, the buffalo that was grazing calmly in daylight and has become unpredictably dangerous in darkness. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. The decision to not hunt at night was therefore not a decision to be avoided during dangerous hours and to return when the hours became safe. It was a decision that reframed what the night was and what the day was in terms of ecological role. During the day, ancient humans were among the most dangerous things in their ecosystem. Perceptive, coordinated, armed, and operating in a sensory environment where their considerable capabilities translated into genuine apex predator status. At night, the ecosystem reversed this relationship, and the rational response was to acknowledge the reversal and behave accordingly. Fire changes this calculation significantly and represents the threshold technology that eventually allowed ancient humans to extend their effective operational security into the dark hours. A campfire provides the human group with the equivalent of a daylight bubble. A zone of visibility extending perhaps 20 to 30 meters in all directions within which human visual capability is restored to functional levels and within which approaching threats can be detected at distances that restore meaningful response time. The fire also, through mechanisms that are partly behavioral and partly physiological in the responding animals, creates a zone of predator deterrence that extends beyond the zone of human visibility. Large African predators have an evolved wariness of fire that reflects millions of years of the mammalian lineage experiencing fire as an environmental hazard. Approaching a burning fire requires overcoming this inherited wariness, and for most predators most of the time, the hunting opportunities available away from the fire are sufficient to make the fire deterrence worth honoring. The maintained campfire therefore allowed ancient humans to occupy the night safely without hunting in it, to use fire as the technology that extended their daylight safety into darkness, not by enabling night activity, but by defending the camp during the vulnerable hours. The fire was not a tool for hunting at night. It was a tool for surviving night without having to hunt in it. Archaeological evidence supports this reading of fire's role. Hearth evidence at ancient sites consistently shows repeated fire use in the same locations. The same campsites used across multiple occupations with fire maintained at established locations. This pattern is consistent with fire as a camp defense technology that anchored the group to a defended position during dark hours, rather than as a mobile hunting aid that accompanied movement through the landscape. The cognitive and social consequences of the night as defended camp dynamic are significant and underappreciated in discussions of ancient human behavior. When the entire group is concentrated in a defended camp during the dark hours, unable to hunt or forage, the activity that fills these hours is social interaction. The fire circle, the gathering of the group around the campfire during the night hours, is proposed by some anthropologists as one of the primary contexts for the development of human social cognition, storytelling, cultural transmission, and the elaboration of social complexity that distinguishes human communities from those of other great apes. Chimpanzees, without fire, and without the need to maintain a defended camp position during the night, do not have extended evening social interactions. They nest individually or in small groups in trees, maintaining relatively minimal social contact during the dark hours. The enforced social concentration of fire-using hominins during the night hours created a regular, extended period of group social time that had no equivalent in earlier hominin or current great ape behavioral ecology. The night in this framework was not a period of forced inactivity, but a period of enforced social interaction. And the social complexity that emerged from thousands of generations of these nightly gatherings may have been as consequential for human evolution as any aspect of the day's hunting activity. Stories, knowledge transmission, social negotiation, the elaboration of ritual and belief, the cultural transmission of hunting knowledge from experienced to inexperienced members. All of these activities would have found their primary context in the extended social time created by the night as camp dynamic. The sensory vulnerability that drove ancient humans away from night hunting also drove them toward a compensatory amplification of the sensory capabilities that did function in low light. Hearing in humans, while less acute than in many nocturnal predators, is capable of far more information extraction than most people in acoustically rich modern environments ever use. The ability to identify specific predator species by vocalization, to locate the direction and distance of a sound with sufficient precision to make behavioral decisions, and to distinguish between sounds that indicate immediate threat and sounds that indicate distant or non-directed activity represents a trained perceptual skill that ancient humans in predator-rich environments would have developed to levels that modern people in acoustically managed environments rarely approach. The acoustic environment of the savanna night is remarkably information-rich for those trained to read it. Different predators vocalize in characteristic ways. The lion's roar, the hyena's whoop, the leopard's rasping cough, the wild dog's high-pitched contact calls, and the direction, proximity, and behavioral context of these vocalizations communicate information about predator location and likely activity. A human group listening from a campfire could track the locations of major predators across the surrounding landscape through the acoustic information available in the dark hours, maintaining awareness of the threat environment without the visual access that daylight provided. This acoustic monitoring of the nocturnal threat environment may have been one of the major functions of the night camp's social gathering. Multiple listeners providing multiple acoustic perspectives on the surrounding landscape, pooling information about predator locations and movements in a way that no individual listener could achieve alone. The collective acoustic awareness of the fire group represented a distributed sensory network that extended the group's effective threat detection range beyond what individual hearing could provide. The relationship between ancient human avoidance of night hunting and the timing of human expansion into different geographic environments is interesting and somewhat under-discussed. The African savanna, where human ancestors evolved, is characterized by a particularly dangerous nocturnal predator community. European and Asian environments that human populations expanded into over the course of the out-of-Africa dispersal had different predator communities, some more and some less dangerous in nocturnal terms. The same fire technology that managed nocturnal predator risk in Africa was the enabling technology for human expansion into colder European and Asian environments, where fire's thermoregulatory role was primary, but its predator deterrence role remained relevant. The practices that ancient humans had developed around fire use in Africa, the camp structure, the maintained fire through the night, the social organization of the night camp, transferred to new environments where both the thermal and predator deterrence functions of fire continued to be relevant. The nocturnal predators of northern environments, wolves, cave bears, cave lions, were differently organized than African predators but no less dangerous in darkness, and the ancient human practices around managed campfire that had evolved in Africa continued to provide appropriate protection in new geographic contexts. The taboo structure that appears in many traditional cultures around night activity, the cultural prohibitions, the ritual frameworks, the stories and warnings that explicitly mark the night as a domain requiring special behavior, represents the cultural encoding of the practical wisdom that avoiding night hunting represented in ancestral environments. These cultural frameworks do not require any awareness of the underlying biological or ecological rationale. They encode the behavioral outcome. Do not move through the landscape at night, in forms that transmit reliably across generations without requiring each generation to independently derive the survival logic that produced the rule. The persistence of night avoidance in cultural practice long after its practical survival logic has diminished, into contexts where electric light, enclosed vehicles, and the absence of apex predators has removed most of the original threat, represents cultural inertia that is doing no harm in the new context, but that originated in a context where following this practice was the difference between returning to camp and not returning. The modern human response to darkness, the anxiety, the elevated vigilance, the preference for light and enclosed spaces at night that persists even in environments where rational assessment reveals no predator threat, is the neurological legacy of the same risk environment that drove ancient humans from the night landscape. The ancestral threat response calibrated to darkness has been retained in human psychology because it was adaptive for millions of years, and it has not been fully recalibrated for environments where the threats that produced it no longer exist. The ancient hunter standing in that African darkness with a spear they could not effectively use made the right call when they turned back toward the fire. Not from cultural conservatism, not from fearfulness, not from ignorance of the prey animals that moved through the dark landscape around them. From accurate assessment of a risk environment in which the costs of proceeding outweighed any possible benefit. From the kind of decision making that is not dramatic, but that, repeated consistently across thousands of encounters over hundreds of thousands of years, is exactly what survival requires. The darkness belonged to other animals. Ancient humans were wise enough to let them have it, and smart enough to build fires that made the night survivable without having to contest it. That combination, knowing when to fight and when to hold position and wait for conditions that favor you, is not weakness. It is the oldest form of intelligence there is.